Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rewilding the Future. Today we're going to talk about a very important subject. But before we begin, I want to say that wolves are one of the most crucial animals for ecosystems and for maintaining balance in the food web. I know wolves. I've seen them in the wild several times, and I never felt threatened by them. In fact, they are shy, cautious around humans, and at the same time curious. Today, our focus is on rewilding wolves in Korea. But first, we'll start with the history of wolves on the Korean Peninsula. After that, we'll explore how wolves could be reintroduced to Korea and the landscapes where they might return. Then we'll dive into their interactions with animals that live in Korea today, as well as with species that could return in the future if we choose to rewild them. For the interaction part, I've combined research with AI visualizations so we can actually see how wolves hunt and how they would behave alongside other predators, like spotted hyenas, and many more species. So let's begin this fascinating journey. For thousands of years, wolves, Canis lupus coreanus, a subspecies of the gray wolf, roamed the Korean Peninsula. They were apex predators of the forests, mountains, and plains, playing a vital role in regulating deer, wild boar, and smaller prey populations. Wolves featured prominently in Korean mythology and folklore, often seen as symbols of strength, guardianship, or divine messengers. Some stories link them to founding myths, where wolves guide or protect humans. This spiritual significance created a complex relationship between humans and wolves, reverence mixed with fear. In traditional Korean rural life, wolves were viewed as both a threat and a necessity. Farmers feared them for attacking livestock, but hunters respected their intelligence and pack loyalty. Their ecological role as keystone predators ensured balance in prey populations, preventing overgrazing and maintaining forest health. For centuries, wolves thrived in Korea's diverse landscapes, from the rugged mountains of the north to the lowland forests of the south. The decline of wolves in Korea accelerated during the late Joseon dynasty, 1392 to 1897, and especially in the early 20th century. Expanding agriculture, livestock grazing, and human settlement pushed wolves into shrinking habitats. The introduction of firearms in the 19th century intensified hunting pressure. Wolves were often targeted for their fur, but the main motivation was conflict with farmers. During the Japanese colonial period, 1910 to 1945, wolf hunting became more systematic. The Japanese government promoted eradication programs, offering bounties for killing pests like wolves, leopards, and tigers. Wolves, which once roamed widely, became concentrated in the northern mountains as persecution increased. These policies not only reduced wolf populations, but also disrupted ecological networks across the peninsula. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953, had devastating effects on wildlife across the peninsula. Massive deforestation, bombing, and the displacement of rural communities destroyed wolf habitats. Wolves were either killed in the crossfire or starved as prey populations collapsed. In the aftermath, South Korea's rapid industrialization in the 1960s-1980s accelerated habitat loss even further. Expanding cities, highways, and farmland fragmented the last wolf territories, leaving them isolated and vulnerable. In South Korea, wolves disappeared completely by the late 20th century. The last confirmed sightings occurred in the 1970s and 1980s, mainly in remote mountain areas. In North Korea, wolves survived longer, but due to limited ecological research, their current status remains uncertain. It is possible that a small number persist in remote northern border regions, though many experts consider the Korean wolf extinct in the wild. The extinction of wolves in Korea created ecological imbalances. Without apex predators, populations of wild boar and deer increased, causing damage to forests, crops, and other wildlife habitats. In modern times, wild boar overpopulation has become a significant problem in South Korea, leading to agricultural losses and dangerous encounters with humans. Wolves' disappearance also erased an important cultural and ecological heritage, breaking a natural link that had existed for millennia. In recent years, Korean conservationists and scientists have shown renewed interest in the wolf. The Korean wolf has been highlighted in cultural projects, documentaries, and even zoological research. In 2022, for example, Seoul Zoo brought in a pair of wolves from overseas, though they were Mongolian wolves, not the extinct Korean subspecies, to spark awareness about predator conservation. These initiatives underline a growing recognition of the wolf's lost role in Korea's ecosystems and culture. There have even been discussions about potential reintroduction programs, possibly using wolves from neighboring populations in Mongolia, China, or Russia. Such proposals face challenges: habitat fragmentation, human-wildlife conflict, and social acceptance. Yet the idea reflects a broader global trend of rewilding and ecological restoration. The extinction of wolves in Korea was not caused by a single event, but by a combination of pressures over centuries. Habitat destruction, rapid deforestation for agriculture, logging, and urban growth left wolves with little territory. Persecution and hunting systematic eradication campaigns, bounties, and traditional hostility from farmers decimated populations. War and industrialization, the Korean War and post-war modernization wiped out the last strongholds of wildlife. Isolation of populations. As habitats fragmented, wolf packs became too small and isolated to survive genetically or ecologically. Together, these factors sealed the fate of the Korean wolf, erasing an apex predator that once symbolized strength, guardianship, and ecological harmony. The disappearance of wolves from Korea left behind a profound ecological vacuum. As apex predators, wolves once maintained balance within Korean ecosystems by regulating populations of deer, wild boar, and smaller mammals. Without wolves, these species grew unchecked, creating ripple effects across forests, fields, and even cities. In modern South Korea, wild boar have become a serious problem, raiding crops, damaging natural vegetation, and even venturing into urban areas. Reintroducing wolves would restore a missing predator-prey dynamic, reducing such imbalances and bringing natural control back into ecosystems. Rewilding wolves is not just about nostalgia. It is about repairing ecological processes that have been broken for decades. The return of wolves would immediately affect prey populations. Wolves target weak, sick, or overabundant individuals, which helps keep prey herds healthier and smaller. In forests, this would reduce overgrazing and allow vegetation to regenerate more naturally, increasing biodiversity. Healthier forests provide shelter and food for countless other species, from birds and amphibians to insects and plants. Wolves, by shaping prey behavior, can also create a landscape of fear, where animals avoid overbrowsing sensitive habitats like young tree growth along rivers. This effect has been observed in Yellowstone National Park, where the reintroduction of wolves helped stabilize ecosystems. A similar effect could be expected in Korea, where overgrazing by wild boar and deer has become a pressing environmental concern. Wolves were once woven deeply into Korean mythology and folklore, symbolizing loyalty, protection, and strength. Their absence is not only an ecological loss, but also a cultural one. Reintroducing wolves would reconnect Koreans with part of their natural heritage. In a country where traditional stories still influence modern identity, wolves could serve as a living symbol of resilience and ecological recovery. Public education and awareness campaigns could highlight both the scientific and cultural importance of restoring wolves, turning them into a source of national pride rather than fear. Reintroducing wolves to Korea would not be simple. The country is densely populated, with limited wilderness compared to other wolf-range states. Large predators need space, corridors to roam, and areas where they can hunt without conflict. Wolves could survive in the mountainous national parks and forested regions of Korea, particularly along the DMZ, which remains one of the most biodiverse and least disturbed areas on the peninsula. However, human-wildlife conflict is an inevitable concern. Farmers may worry about livestock losses, and urban populations might fear wolf encounters. Any reintroduction project would require strong government support, compensation systems for farmers, and careful monitoring of wolf populations to prevent conflicts. The case for wolf reintroduction goes beyond ecology. It touches on climate resilience, biodiversity protection, and even human coexistence with nature. Without wolves, South Korea faces growing problems of wild boar overpopulation, which threaten agriculture and human safety. Wolves could provide a natural, cost-effective solution compared to culling programs or constant human intervention. Moreover, restoring apex predators is essential for Korea's broader rewilding goals, ensuring that forests and grasslands recover their natural complexity. From a global perspective, rewilding wolves in Korea would send a powerful message. It would demonstrate that even in a modern, densely developed nation, it is possible to restore balance with nature. This could inspire similar efforts across East Asia, where apex predators like tigers, leopards, and bears have also been driven to extinction or near extinction. By bringing wolves back, Korea could lead the way in a new era of ecological restoration. A reintroduction program could begin with small, carefully managed populations released into secure habitats, such as the DMZ buffer zone or large national parks. Scientific monitoring, public education, and strong conservation policies would be critical. Over time, as wolves re-establish themselves, ecosystems would regain lost dynamics, and Korean society could rediscover its ancient connection with one of its most iconic animals. The extinction of wolves in Korea was a human-made tragedy, but rewilding offers a chance to heal that wound. By restoring wolves, Korea would not only protect biodiversity and control ecological imbalances, but also take a step toward living in greater harmony with the natural world. A harmony that once defined its landscapes and could define them again. Rewilding wolves in Korea requires identifying areas that can support viable populations while minimizing conflict with humans. The Korean Peninsula is densely populated, yet it still contains vast mountain ranges and forested landscapes that could serve as suitable wolf habitats. Among these, the northern regions, including the Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, the Taebaek Mountains, and the Baekdu mountain range, stand out as promising candidates. These areas remain relatively undisturbed, with large tracts of forest, abundant prey populations such as deer and wild boar, and fewer human settlements compared to the south. The ecological conditions mirror those of regions in Mongolia and northern China, where wolves still thrive. The DMZ, ironically one of the most militarized borders in the world, has become an unintended sanctuary for wildlife. For over 70 years, human access has been limited, allowing ecosystems to regenerate naturally. Scientists have documented the presence of endangered species, such as red-crowned cranes, Asiatic black bears, and Amur leopards. With its low human disturbance and high biodiversity, the DMZ is perhaps the single most suitable area for wolf reintroduction in Korea. Wolves could thrive here, hunting deer and wild boar, while remaining largely separated from human communities. Furthermore, introducing wolves to the DMZ could strengthen conservation cooperation between North and South Korea, turning an area of division into a symbol of ecological restoration and peace. Stretching along Korea's eastern spine, the Taebaek Mountains offer another strong candidate for wolf rewilding. The region is heavily forested and less urbanized than the western plains, providing wolves with cover and prey. National parks such as Seoraksan, Odaesan, and Taebaeksan already host rich ecosystems that could sustain wolves if reintroduction were carefully managed. These areas have relatively high populations of roe deer, sika deer in some regions, and wild boar, all key prey for wolves. The mountainous terrain also provides natural refuges that could reduce conflict with nearby agricultural communities. If properly planned, the Taebaek Range could support a stable population of wolves over time. Baekdu Mountain, straddling the border between North Korea and China, is another ecologically suitable site. It is one of the most biodiverse areas in the Korean Peninsula, with large tracts of forests and prey populations similar to those found in northeastern China, where wolves still roam. This region could serve as a natural reintroduction site, with the added advantage of ecological continuity across the border. Wolves introduced here could potentially link with wild populations in northeast China and Russia, increasing genetic diversity and ensuring long-term survival. Politically, this would require cooperation with North Korea, but ecologically, it makes the Baekdu area one of the most realistic and sustainable sites for wolf rewilding. Why these areas are suitable? Each of these regions, DMZ, Taebaek Mountains, and Baekdu Mountain, offers a unique set of advantages. Large, continuous habitats. Wolves need space to form territories and hunt. These areas provide the necessary expanses of forest and mountains. Abundant prey deer and wild boar populations are thriving in Korea, sometimes to the point of becoming pests. Wolves would help control these species naturally. Low human density. Unlike the urbanized lowlands, these mountain and border areas have fewer villages and farms, reducing the chances of livestock conflict. Cultural and conservation value. Restoring wolves in these landscapes would reconnect Koreans with their ecological and cultural heritage, while also strengthening the role of national parks and protected areas. While these areas are ecologically suitable, rewilding wolves is not without challenges. Human-wildlife conflict must be managed carefully, especially in regions where farming is still practiced. Compensation schemes for livestock losses, public education campaigns, and scientific monitoring will be essential. Political barriers are also significant. Cooperation with North Korea for DMZ or Baekdu projects would be necessary. Still, the ecological and cultural rewards outweigh the challenges. If wolves were successfully reintroduced to the DMZ, Taebaek, and Baekdu regions, they could gradually reclaim their role as apex predators in Korean ecosystems. Deer and boar populations would be brought under control, forests would regenerate more naturally, and biodiversity would increase. Wolves would not only restore balance to Korea's landscapes, but also serve as a living emblem of resilience, turning past extinction into future hope.
If wolves are reintroduced to Korea, their interactions with both native species and rewilded species will define the success of the restoration. Wolves are generalist predators with highly adaptable hunting strategies, meaning they can adjust to new prey availability. In a rewilded Korean landscape, where species like bison, wild horses, wild ass, saiga antelope, and even Asian elephants could be restored, the wolf would act as both regulator and balancer, shaping ecosystems much like they do in Siberia, Mongolia, or Yellowstone. Deer, especially roe deer and sika deer, already present in Korea, would be wolves' primary prey. Wolves tend to target weak, sick, or young individuals, keeping populations healthy. This predation would also prevent deer from overgrazing forest undergrowth and young trees, allowing regeneration of vegetation. Similar to Yellowstone, where wolf predation reshaped elk behavior and restored riparian zones, wolves in Korea would create a landscape of fear for deer, altering their grazing patterns and reducing localized ecosystem damage. The water deer is one of Korea's most distinctive native ungulates, known for its fang-like tusks. In the absence of wolves, water deer have become extremely common in South Korea, often venturing into farmlands and even urban areas. Wolves would likely become their primary natural predator, targeting fawns and weakened adults. This interaction would be vital for controlling populations, reducing crop damage, and keeping the species ecologically balanced. Wolves would also indirectly reduce road accidents caused by water deer, which have become a significant issue in modern Korea. Musk deer, elusive and nocturnal, still inhabit parts of Northeast Asia. In the past, they ranged more widely into Korea, and a rewilding project could potentially restore them. Wolves would naturally prey on musk deer, though their solitary, stealthy behavior makes them harder to catch than herd animals like deer. Predation pressure would help maintain musk deer populations at sustainable levels while preventing overbrowsing of alpine plants in mountainous regions. This predator-prey relationship also has evolutionary significance. Musk deer developed agility and secrecy, in part as adaptations to wolf predation. If elk were reintroduced into Korea's mountain forests, they would likely become an important prey species for wolves. Elk are larger than deer, so wolves would hunt them cooperatively in packs, targeting calves or weaker adults. Predation pressure would prevent elk from overbrowsing sensitive forest areas, ensuring that young forests and alpine vegetation regenerate naturally. In doing so, wolves would indirectly benefit birds, insects, and smaller mammals that depend on diverse vegetation. Wild boar are already widespread in Korea and across Eurasia, and without wolves, their numbers have exploded. They damage crops, spread disease, and compete with other wildlife. Wolves are one of the few natural predators capable of controlling boar populations effectively. By preying on piglets and weakened adults, wolves help reduce the impact of boar on ecosystems. In modern Korea, wolf rewilding could be the single most effective solution to the current wild boar crisis. This interaction would be immediate and critical for ecosystem restoration. The long-tailed goral, a mountain-dwelling ungulate native to Korea, is already endangered due to habitat loss and hunting. Wolves would be one of their natural predators, likely targeting juveniles or weaker adults. This predation would prevent local overpopulation and help keep goral herds mobile, reducing overgrazing of alpine vegetation. Since gorals prefer steep cliffs and rocky terrain, their natural agility would give them some protection from wolves, ensuring a balanced predator-prey relationship rather than a risk of extermination. If bison were rewilded into Korea, the most suitable option would be European bison, Bison bonasus, rather than American bison. European bison are native to Eurasia and once roamed widely across forests from Spain to the Caucasus. They are more adapted to wooded habitats like those found in Korea. Wolves would not often kill healthy adult bison, as they are too large and dangerous, but they would target calves, sick, or old individuals. This natural predation would prevent overpopulation, keeping bison herds dynamic and genetically strong. The presence of bison would also create open forest glades and grasslands, complementing the wolf's role by diversifying habitats. The Asiatic water buffalo, Bubulus arni, is another potential species for rewilding in Asia. Wolves could prey on calves or weaker individuals, but adult buffalo would be highly dangerous to attack. Packs of wolves may occasionally test buffalo herds, but interactions would likely be rare and opportunistic. The presence of wolves would influence buffalo behavior, making them more vigilant and shaping how and where they graze. This predator-prey dynamic would restore complexity to wetlands and river ecosystems, where buffalo can shape waterways and wolves provide top-down control. Wild cattle such as aurochs, extinct but possible candidates for backbreeding rewilding projects, or primitive breeds could be reintroduced in East Asian landscapes. Wolves would interact with them much as they do with bison, targeting calves or sick individuals, but generally avoiding healthy adults. The presence of wolves would shape cattle herds' behavior, keeping them vigilant and moving, which prevents overgrazing in any one area. This interaction creates dynamic grazing patterns that restore grassland biodiversity. Wild horses, or feral horse populations such as Przewalski's horse, are increasingly being used in rewilding projects in Eurasia. Wolves naturally prey on foals and sometimes weakened adults, but healthy adults are often too fast and strong. This dynamic prevents horse overpopulation, especially in grassland and steppe ecosystems. Wolves also influence horse herds indirectly, forcing them to move and graze more widely, which reduces overgrazing in any one area. If wild horses were restored in Korea, wolves would likely interact with them in similar ways as they do on the Mongolian steppe. The wild ass, Equus hyenas, including Asiatic onagers and kulans, once roamed widely across Central Asia and parts of East Asia. Wolves are one of their historical predators, preying mainly on foals and weaker individuals. Wild asses are fast and wary, making them challenging targets, but wolf presence ensures that herds remain mobile and less destructive to fragile steppe vegetation. If rewilding Korea or East Asia with wild asses, wolves would be vital in keeping herds in ecological balance. The saiga antelope, once widespread across Eurasia during the Ice Age, still survives in parts of Central Asia. Saiga are migratory and highly vulnerable to predation by wolves, which remain one of their natural predators today. Wolves help keep saiga herds healthier by removing diseased and weak individuals, a critical role given that saiga are susceptible to disease outbreaks. If saiga were ever rewilded into Korea or East Asia, wolves would help regulate their numbers and prevent uncontrolled population swings that destabilize grasslands. The idea of rewilding Asian elephants to Korea is ambitious and symbolic of Pleistocene rewilding. Wolves would not pose a threat to healthy adult elephants, as their size and social structure protect them. However, wolves might occasionally attempt to prey on elephant calves, particularly if separated from the herd. While such predation would be rare, it would mirror historic dynamics in Asia where wolves coexisted with elephants. The elephants, in turn, would shape landscapes by knocking down trees, creating open clearings, and dispersing seeds, indirectly benefiting wolves by sustaining grasslands that support prey species like deer, elk, and saiga. Rhesus macaques historically ranged across much of East Asia and could potentially be reintroduced to Korean forests. Wolves would rarely prey on adult macaques, but juveniles or injured individuals could be vulnerable, especially when macaques forage on the ground. The greater ecological role of wolves here would be indirect. By regulating herbivore populations like deer and boar, wolves would reduce competition for forest resources, allowing fruiting trees and understory plants to flourish, benefiting primates like macaques. In effect, wolves would create healthier, more diverse habitats that macaques could exploit. Otters share wetland and riverine habitats with wolves, and while wolves are unlikely to hunt healthy otters, competition for fish and aquatic resources could occur. In practice, wolves would mostly scavenge fish remains or opportunistically prey on otters only if they are weak or stranded. Indirectly, wolves could improve riverine ecosystems by reducing wild boar pressure on wetlands, which benefits otters. Thus, rather than being major predators of otters, wolves would act as ecosystem partners, supporting healthier aquatic food chains. In coastal or island rewilding scenarios, wolves could occasionally scavenge marine mammal carcasses that wash ashore, seals, dolphins, or whales. While direct predation on marine mammals is extremely rare, wolves in some Arctic regions are known to hunt seal pups on ice. In a Korean context, this interaction would mostly be opportunistic scavenging, linking terrestrial and marine ecosystems by recycling nutrients from washed-up carcasses into inland food webs. Wolves frequently prey on small mammals such as hares, rodents, and rabbits, especially when larger prey is scarce. In Korea, this would help stabilize small mammal populations, preventing population booms that damage vegetation and crops. Predation on rodents also limits the spread of diseases carried by these species. By regulating small mammals, wolves indirectly protect ground-nesting birds and promote healthier vegetation. Wolves are not bird specialists, but they may opportunistically prey on ground-nesting birds, chicks, or scavenged eggs. More importantly, wolves indirectly benefit bird populations by reshaping ecosystems. By reducing deer and boar numbers, wolves allow understory plants and shrubs to recover, creating better habitats for songbirds, pheasants, and raptors. Scavenging birds like ravens, magpies, and eagles also benefit directly from wolf kills as they feed on carcasses left behind. This creates a scavenger guild dynamic where wolves sustain bird populations through carrion availability. Red foxes are smaller mesopredators that thrive in human-dominated landscapes and have spread widely in the absence of wolves. When wolves return, they usually suppress fox populations through intra-guild competition. Wolves occasionally kill foxes, exclude them from prime habitats, or outcompete them for prey. However, this does not mean foxes vanish. Instead, foxes adapt by shifting to smaller prey such as rodents and birds, or by occupying more marginal habitats where wolves are less active. In a Korean rewilding context, wolves would help reduce fox overabundance, restoring balance among mesopredators and preventing them from exerting excessive pressure on small bird and rodent populations. Raccoon dogs, Nyctereutes procyanoids, are omnivorous canids native to East Asia and still widespread in Korea. They overlap with wolves in habitat, but have different ecological niches, feeding on fruits, insects, amphibians, and small animals. Wolves would dominate them in direct encounters, sometimes killing them, but raccoon dogs would likely persist in more concealed habitats, wetlands, thickets, farmlands. Wolves could indirectly benefit raccoon dogs by leaving behind carrion scraps from large kills, providing easy food sources. This dynamic is one of competition mixed with scavenging opportunity, ensuring raccoon dogs remain but at lower densities. The Asiatic wild dog, or dole, Kuan alpinus, historically ranged across East Asia, including Korea. Doles are pack hunters like wolves, but they are smaller and more cooperative in hunting style, often taking down medium-sized prey such as deer. Where doles and wolves overlap, for example in Siberia or Mongolia, they usually compete strongly. Wolves, being larger and stronger, often dominate and can exclude doles from prime hunting grounds. If doles were reintroduced to Korea, their coexistence with wolves would depend on prey availability and habitat size. In rich ecosystems with abundant deer and boar, both could survive, but wolves would remain the dominant carnivore. This relationship mirrors that of wolves and coyotes in North America, where competition is high but coexistence is possible with enough space and prey. Asian black bears, Ursus tibetanus, are omnivorous and still present in Korea, though in low numbers. Wolves and black bears would interact mostly through competition and scavenging. Wolves might harass young or injured bears, while bears could steal wolf kills. In some cases, wolves and bears coexist by partitioning resources. Wolves focus on hunting, while bears rely heavily on fruits, nuts, insects, and scavenging opportunities. In rewilding scenarios, wolves would help regulate prey populations, indirectly benefiting black bears by reducing competition with herbivores for fruits and plants. The relationship is thus both competitive and complementary. Brown bears, Ursus arctos, once lived in parts of Korea but were extirpated centuries ago. In regions like Russia and Alaska, wolves and brown bears have a complex relationship. Bears often steal wolf kills, while wolves may prey on bear cubs or harass weaker individuals. Generally, brown bears dominate single encounters, but wolf packs can overwhelm lone bears. The presence of both species enriches ecosystems by creating a scavenger dynamic, where carcasses are shared among many species. Rewilding brown bears to Korea alongside wolves would restore ancient predator guilds, though it would require vast wilderness and careful conflict management with humans. Spotted hyenas, Crocuta crocuta, are not native to Korea, but were part of Eurasian ecosystems during the Pleistocene. If reintroduced as part of a bold rewilding vision, their interactions with wolves would be highly competitive. In Africa, lions and hyenas engage in constant rivalry. A similar relationship would emerge between wolves and hyenas in Korea. Wolves are social hunters like hyenas, and both target medium to large prey. Hyenas, with their bone-crushing jaws, excel at scavenging carcasses, while wolves are more effective pack hunters. Together, they would create intense competition for resources, but this rivalry would also generate ecological balance by preventing either species from becoming too dominant. Scavenger birds, foxes, and raccoon dogs would benefit enormously from the leftovers of these large predators. The leopard cat is a small nocturnal predator still present in parts of Korea. Wolves and leopard cats occupy very different ecological niches. Wolves focus on larger prey such as deer and wild boar, while leopard cats feed mainly on rodents, birds, reptiles, and insects. Direct conflict would be minimal, though wolves may occasionally kill leopard cats if they encounter them, largely to reduce competition. Indirectly, wolves could actually benefit leopard cats. By controlling deer and boar populations, wolves would reduce habitat degradation, leading to denser understory vegetation that supports rodents and birds, the leopard cat's primary prey. This is an example of indirect positive interaction through ecosystem balance. The Eurasian lynx is a medium-sized cat that once roamed Korea but is now extinct in the region. As ambush predators, lynx specialize in hunting roe deer, hares, and birds. Wolves and lynx often coexist across Europe and Siberia. While wolves can outcompete lynx and occasionally kill them, lynx usually avoid wolves and thrive in more rugged, forested terrain where stealth is an advantage. In a rewilded Korean ecosystem, wolves would dominate open landscapes and larger prey, while lynx would maintain their role as solitary ambush hunters in deep forests. Together, they would create predator diversity, preventing any single prey species, like roe deer, from becoming too abundant. The Amur leopard, one of the most endangered big cats on Earth, once ranged into the Korean Peninsula. Wolves and leopards overlap in diet. Both hunt deer and smaller mammals. However, leopards rely on stealth and ambush, while wolves hunt in packs. In Russia's Far East, where Amur leopards still survive, wolves and leopards compete but coexist. Wolves may occasionally steal leopard kills, but leopards adapt by dragging carcasses into cover or hunting smaller prey that wolves ignore. In a Korean rewilding scenario, wolves and Amur leopards would form a tense but balanced relationship, with wolves as dominant pack hunters and leopards as solitary specialists. This would restore an ancient dynamic that once defined East Asian forests. The Amur tiger is the largest cat in the world and once roamed into the Korean Peninsula. Tigers and wolves have one of the most dramatic predator relationships in Eurasia. Tigers, as solitary apex predators, dominate wolves in direct encounters and may kill them to reduce competition. Wolves, however, are highly adaptable. They avoid tiger core territories but survive on the fringes, taking smaller prey or scavenging leftovers from tiger kills. In Russia's Far East, wolves are rare where tiger densities are high, but thrive in areas with fewer tigers. In a Korean rewilding vision, tigers and wolves would likely partition habitats, tigers dominating dense forests, wolves maintaining packs in mountainous and open regions. Their rivalry would shape the distribution of prey and predator territories, creating a complex, layered ecosystem. Asiatic lions once ranged across much of Asia, including regions near Korea in prehistoric times. Reintroducing them would symbolically replace the extinct cave lion, restoring another layer of predator diversity. In modern ecosystems, lions and wolves have no direct overlap, but based on African analogs, lions versus hyenas and wild dogs, lions would dominate wolves in direct encounters. Wolves would be forced to avoid lion prides, which could monopolize large prey like bison or elk in open landscapes. However, wolves would still thrive by hunting medium prey and exploiting regions lions avoid, such as dense mountains or marginal habitats. The presence of both wolves and lions would create a dynamic of competition and resource sharing, ensuring that no single predator monopolizes the ecosystem.
And so, the howl of the wolf, once silenced on the Korean Peninsula, could return as a symbol of balance, resilience, and renewal. Wolves are not just predators, they are keystone species, shaping forests, grasslands, and rivers through their presence. Their return would mean healthier deer and boar populations, stronger forests, and more vibrant ecosystems. It would also restore part of Korea's cultural soul, reconnecting people with stories and landscapes that once echoed with the call of the wolf. But wolves are just one part of a larger vision, Pleistocene rewilding. Korea was once home to a breathtaking array of animals: tigers, leopards, lions, bison, wild horses, and more. Over time, wars, hunting, and human expansion drove them to extinction. Without these great animals, ecosystems lost their balance. Pleistocene rewilding is about bringing back that lost diversity, step by step, restoring wolves but also considering bison, lynx, wild horses, even elephants and other megafauna. By doing so, Korea would not only heal its natural landscapes but also prepare for the future. Stronger forests that absorb carbon, rivers that flow more freely, and wildlife that coexists with people in dynamic balance. Korea needs Pleistocene rewilding because it offers hope in the face of biodiversity loss, climate change, and ecological crisis. It is a chance to rebuild what was lost and to show the world that even in the most modern, human-dominated landscapes, wild nature can return. The wolf's howl could once again carry through the mountains, not as an echo of the past, but as the sound of a future where humans and wildlife thrive together.